A man lies sprawled across 3 entire seats at a posh theater. Before the show has even started, an usher walks by and notices the man. "Sir, you're only allowed 1 seat. Can you please sit up?" The man groans but stays where he is. The usher, becoming impatient with the man, says, "Sir, if you don't get up, I will need to get my manager involved." Again, the man just groans, which infuriates the usher as he marches off to get the manager. In a few moments, he returns with the manager, and they both repeatedly attempt to move him, but with no success. It was at this point that the manager called the police. Moments later, a police officer arrives and approaches the man. "All right, buddy, what's your name?" "Sam," the man moans. "And where are you from, Sam?" With pain in his voice, Sam replied, "The balcony." A police officer is sitting in his cruiser watching for speeding cars. He sees a car puttering along at 10 kilometers per hour and thinks, "This car is almost as dangerous as a speeder," and pulls them over. As he walks up to the car, the little lady driving rolls down the window and asks, "Is there something wrong, officer?" "Well, yes," says the cop. "Why are you driving so slowly?" "I'm going the limit," says the little old lady, very confused. "The sign back there says 10. "You're mistaken, ma'am. That sign was to tell you that this is Route 10, and the limit here is 60. "Oh my," says the woman, very embarrassed. "I am so sorry. I will pay closer attention to the signs." At this point, the police officer notices the other passengers in the car. 3 more elderly women, all very pale and wide-eyed, clutching the armrests with white-knuckled hands. "Ma'am," he asks, "are your passengers all right? They look quite shaken." "Oh, they'll be fine, dear," says the elderly woman. "We just turned off of Route 250. A monkey is sitting in a tree smoking a joint when a lizard walks past. The lizard looks up and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" The monkey says, "Smoking a joint. Come up and join me." So the lizard climbs up and sits next to the monkey, and they have another joint. After a while, the lizard says his mouth is dry and that he's going to get a drink from the river. At the riverbank, the lizard is so stoned that he leans over too far and falls in. A crocodile sees this and swims over to the stoned lizard, helping him to the side. He then asks the lizard, "What's the matter with you?" The lizard explains that he was up in the tree smoking a joint with the monkey and his mouth got dry, and that he was so wasted that when he went to get a drink from the river, he fell in. The inquisitive crocodile says he has to check this out. He walks into the jungle and finds the tree where the monkey is sitting, finishing a joint. He looks up and says, "Hey, monkey." The monkey looks down and says, "OMG, dude! How much water did you drink?" "Water." A young blonde fears that her boyfriend is seeing another girl. One day, the girl is visiting her boyfriend's apartment for lunch and stumbles across another woman's discarded garments on his bedroom floor. After sitting coolly through the meal, avoiding eye contact, she quietly excuses herself without explanation. She is incredibly hurt, and on her way home finds herself in a local gun shop purchasing a handgun. The next day, she awakens with renewed vengeance for her lover's betrayal. She dresses and immediately heads straight to his apartment, gun tucked in the back of her pants as a failsafe in case things get ugly. Not bothering to knock, she bursts into her boyfriend's apartment to find him and a brunette cuddled up on the couch. As the reality sinks in, the blonde is overcome with complete despair and rage. She whips the gun out and holds it to her own head. The boyfriend leaps off the couch and starts begging and pleading with her not to shoot herself. The blonde, a vile look in her crazed eyes, entirely devoid of that love she once knew, snarls, "Shut up, you're next." A woman goes on a business trip overseas, leaving her husband behind to look after the house and kids. After a few days, she calls up to see how everything is. "Everything's fine," he says. "The kids are finally sleeping okay without you here, and my boss has given me an extra week off until you're back. Oh, I forgot to say, the cat's dead. She was hit by a car." "What?" says the wife. "Are you serious? Why couldn't you have broken it to me more gently?" "How do you mean?" "You know how much I loved her. You could have lied to me and just built it up gradually. Like you could have said she was stuck on the roof, and then tomorrow told me that the fire brigade was coming over to rescue her, and the day after that she'd fallen and broken her leg, and then on Friday you could tell me that she passed peacefully in her sleep. Don't just blurt out, 'The cat's dead.'" The man apologizes, and his wife hangs up, angry at him. After a few days, she calls back to apologize. "I'm sorry I snapped," she says. "These meetings have just been really stressful. How are you all doing?" "We're all good here," says the man. "Johnny got a certificate for swimming 100 meters, and Molly says she wants a pony for Christmas. Oh, I nearly forgot. Your mom is stuck on the roof." For several years, a man was having an affair with an Italian woman. One night, she confided in him that she was pregnant. Not wanting to ruin his reputation or his marriage, he paid her a large sum of money if she would go to Italy to secretly have the child. If she stayed in Italy to raise the child, he would also provide child support until the child turned 18. She agreed, but asked how he would know when the baby was born. To keep it discreet, he told her to simply mail him a postcard and write spaghetti on the back. He would then arrange for the child support payments to begin. One day, about 9 months later, he came home to his confused wife. "Honey," she said, "you received a very strange postcard today." "Oh, really? Let me see," he said. The wife gave it to him and watched as her husband read the card, turned white, and fainted. On the card was written, "Spaghetti, spaghetti, spaghetti. 2 with meatballs, 1 without, send extra sauce." A retired couple sitting at home was reliving their 50 years of marriage together. The wife finally had gotten the courage to ask, "What's the cigar box under the bed you told me to never open?" The husband sat a moment and then got up, abruptly leaving the room. When he returned, he had the cigar box. He sat down and opened it. Inside, there were 3 $50 bills. "I wasn't always the man I am today. I haven't always been faithful. Times were tough when we were younger, and it caused us to struggle even more. But every time I was unfaithful, I put $50 in this box to remind myself how much I was hurting us." The wife sat silent a few minutes. She had tears in her eyes when she stood up and went outside. As she drove away, her husband feared he may have hurt her too badly for their marriage to survive. To his surprise, she returned after a while. She had a jar with $50.05 in it. She explained that she also had been unfaithful and made the gentleman leave something behind, so she too would have a reminder. The husband seemed saddened and relieved but confused, all at the same time. The wife asked for his reaction. "I don't understand. Who's the AH that left 5 cents?" "What do you mean? They all left 5 cents. A couple was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary when the wife claimed that she and her husband hadn't argued since their wedding night. After being asked about how they did it, the wife explains that after their wedding ceremony, they went and took a little honeymoon in a horse and buggy. The horse walked 10 miles and stopped, refusing to go further. "That's one," said the wife. The horse looked back, walked another 5 miles and stopped, refusing to go further. "That's 2, said the wife. The horse looked back, walked another 5 miles and stopped, refusing to go further. "All right, that's 3, said the wife angrily. She stepped out of their buggy, grabbed a shotgun and shot the horse. "Hold on," the husband said. "What do you think you are doing? We are 20 miles from home with no way back, and that was a vicious act of animal cruelty." The wife looked at her new husband and said, "That's 1. A man and a woman are on their way to their wedding. They get into a terrible car crash and are killed instantly. They find themselves standing in front of St. Peter at the pearly gates. St. Peter says, "Welcome. You have both lived good lives and are welcome into heaven." The man says, "That's wonderful, but we were on our way to our wedding to be betrothed. Is it possible to still get married in heaven?" St. Peter says, "You know, I've never been asked that before. Wait here and I'll check." St. Peter leaves and is gone for a really long time. He finally returns saying, "Good news! You can indeed get married in heaven." The man replies, "That's great news, but we were discussing while you were gone if it doesn't work out. Could we still get a divorce?" St. Peter takes his clipboard and slams it on the podium, exclaiming, "I just spent 10 years looking for a priest. Do you know how long it's going to take to find a lawyer?" 2 men are out on the golf course taking a break to smoke a cigar. One pulls out a small matchbox while the other reaches into his golf bag and pulls out the biggest lighter you've ever seen. The first man stares, laughs, and says, "Holy moly! That's the biggest lighter I've ever seen! It must be a foot long! Where did you get that thing?" "Well," the second man sighs, "it's a long story." "We've got hours ahead of us," his companion points out. All right, the second man relents. "Thing is, I found a magic lamp while I was practicing the other day and the genie gave me this lighter." The first man laughs in disbelief, but his friend pulls out an old oil lamp from his bag. Intrigued, the first man rubs it, and sure enough, a genie appears and offers him a wish. Without missing a beat, the first man says, "I want $1,000,000. The genie nods, snaps his fingers, and vanishes into a wisp of smoke. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, suddenly, the ground rumbles. The rumbling gets louder and louder, and before they know it, the sky darkens as a massive flock of ducks flies overhead. There are hundreds, no, thousands of them, filling the air with quacking. For 10 straight minutes, the men hold their ears, trying to shield themselves from the deafening sound, while their golf gear is scattered and other golfers flee in panic. When it finally dies down and the last few ducks fly off into the distance, the second man looks around at the carnage. Duck poop everywhere, the course in disarray, and says, "What the hell was that? I asked for $1,000,000, not 1,000,000 ducks." His friend shrugs, sighing. "Yeah, the genie's a bit hard of hearing. Did you really think I wished for a 12-inch Bixie?" A poor old woman facing eviction was forced to sell her valuables. As she rummaged through her dusty belongings, she came across a dull copper kettle. Intrigued by its possible value, she dusted it off, and bam! A genie erupted from its neck. The genie said, "I've seen your struggles and I will grant you 3 wishes. The woman, astonished, thought for a moment and said, "Age has taken its toll on me. I wish to be young and beautiful once more." Bam! In an instant, the old woman transformed into a ravishing young lady. Thrilled by her newfound beauty, she declared, "Genie, I want to live a life of grandeur. I want to be rich." Bam! The room swirled and shifted, turning her humble cottage into a magnificent mansion. She looked down and saw her worn clothing replaced with a stunning dress and shining heels. As she marveled at the transformation, the genie stood solemnly and said, "You have 1 wish left." The woman paused and then felt a brush against her leg. It was her old cat, frightened by the sudden change in surroundings. She looked up at the genie and said, "This cat has been with me through everything. Please turn him into a man so we can spend many happy days together." Bam! In a blinding flash, the cat vanished, and standing in his place was a tall, dark-haired, handsome young man. Immediately enamored, the woman fell into his arms. The genie, his work done, disappeared. As she gazed lovingly into the young man's eyes, he whispered, "I bet you wish you hadn't had me fixed." Nelson Mandela was sitting at home watching TV when he heard a knock on the door. He opened it to find a small Chinese man clutching a clipboard and shouting, "You sign! You sign!" Behind the man was a massive truck loaded with car exhausts. Nelson stood there in confusion as the man continued yelling, "You sign! You sign!" "Look, mate, I think you've got the wrong person," Nelson said, slightly bemused. "Please leave." He shut the door in the man's face. The next day, another knock. Nelson opened the door, and once again the same little man appeared, this time holding a clipboard with a truck full of brake pads behind him. He once again shouted, "You sign! You sign!" Frustrated, Nelson shoved the man back, saying, "I don't want them. You've got the wrong person." He slammed the door again. The following afternoon, Nelson was resting when yet another knock echoed through the house. He opened the door to find the same man, now with 2 huge trucks loaded with car parts, still holding his clipboard and shouting, "You sign! You sign!" At this point, Nelson had had enough. He grabbed the little man by the shirt and shouted, "I don't want any of this. Do you understand? You've got the wrong person. Who are you looking for?" The little man, thoroughly confused, looked at his clipboard and said, "You are not a Nissan main dealer." Once upon a time, there were 2 canaries in a cage, 1 male, 1 female. After months of glancing at each other from opposite sides, the male canary decided to make a move. He scooted over to the female's side and said, Since we're in this together, why don't I just move to your side of the cage? The female canary responded, No, thanks. So, a bit deflated, he returned to his side. But soon he found it too lonely, so he tried again. This time he asked, I'm sorry if I was too forward before. How about we get to know each other first? Again, she replied, No, thanks. Resigned to his fate, he returned to his side of the cage, but still couldn't shake his feelings. After some time, he made one last attempt. He moved halfway across the cage and said, Well, could we at least talk? To his surprise, she softened and said, Oh, I'm so sorry I've been so rude. You see, I've just been diagnosed with a canary disease called chirpies, and apparently, it's untweetable. The police asked me to identify what they thought was my girlfriend's body. They pulled the sheet back to show her blonde hair, blue eyes, and pretty face. I can't be certain, I said. The sheet went down to reveal her creamy white breast. Sorry, I'm still not sure. They took the sheet completely off. I stared at the pale body and shaved vajayjay. That's definitely not her. Are you sure? Yes, positive. My girlfriend is black. A man on his retirement purchased a house situated near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace, then the new school year began. One afternoon, early into the first semester, 3 young boys came down the street, beating merrily on every bin they passed. They did this the following day and the days after that, for a week, until the man decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, You kids are a lot of fun. In fact, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Would you do me a favor? I would give you each $1 if you promise to come around and do your thing. The boys were more than happy to accept this and continued to bang the bins. After a few days, the man came out to meet them with a sad smile and said, This recession really is putting a dent in my income. From now on, I will pay you each 50 cents to continue. The boys were unimpressed by this, but continued to do the same afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again and said, Look, the recession has again reduced my income, so from now on, I am afraid I can only pay you 25 cents each. The leader then exclaims angrily, That's it? If you really think we are going to waste our time banging the bins for 25 cents each, you must be a fool. No way that's going to happen. We quit. The man then enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it, and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. My dad is a farmer and we have chickens. One day we were taking lots of eggs to the market in a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Very good, said the teacher. Next, Mary said, We are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched. Very good, said the teacher again, very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was Barney's turn to tell his story. My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete. Go on, said the teacher, intrigued. Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete till the blade broke. And then she killed the last 10 with her bare hands. Good heavens, said the horrified teacher. What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story? The child said, Stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking. A man was driving when he approached a yellow light. He did the right thing and stopped at the crosswalk, even though he could have made it through before it turned red. Behind him, a woman was tailgating, furious that she'd missed her chance to get through the intersection. She honked her horn and screamed in frustration, dropping her cell phone and makeup in the process. Still ranting, she suddenly heard a tap on her window. She looked up to see a serious-looking police officer. Step out of the vehicle with your hands up, he ordered. Confused and upset, she was taken to the station where she was searched, fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. A couple of hours later, the officer who arrested her came to the cell, apologizing. "I'm really sorry for the mix-up," he said. "But when I saw you blowing your horn, flipping off the guy in front of you and cursing him out, I noticed your 'What would Jesus do?' bumper sticker, choose life license plate holder, follow me to Sunday school sticker, and the chrome-plated Christian fish emblem on your car. Naturally, I assumed you'd stolen it." Sitting in his patrol car on the side of the highway, a state trooper watched for speeders when he spotted a car creeping along at just 22 miles per hour. "That's just as dangerous as speeding," he thought, flipping on his lights and pulling the car over. As he approached, he noticed 5 elderly women inside, 2 in the front and 3 in the back, all wide-eyed and clutching their seats as if they'd just seen a ghost. The driver, a little confused, looked up and said, "Officer, I don't understand. I wasn't speeding. Why did you pull me over?" "Ma'am," the officer said, "driving well below the speed limit can be just as dangerous." "Below the limit?" "No, sir. I was doing exactly 22 miles an hour," she replied proudly. The officer stifled a chuckle. "Ma'am, that's not the speed limit. That's the route number." The woman's face turned red as she laughed. "Oh my, I had no idea. Thank you for pointing that out, officer." The trooper smiled, but couldn't help asking, "Before you go, is everyone in the car okay? These ladies look like they've seen a ghost." The driver glanced at her pale, speechless passengers and waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, they'll be fine in a minute, officer. We just got off Route 142. A police officer was interrogating 3 blondes in training to become detectives. To test their observational skills, he showed the first blonde a picture of a suspect for 5 seconds, then hid it. "Officer, this is your suspect. How would you recognize him?" The first blonde confidently replied, "That's easy. We'll catch him fast because he only has one eye." The officer sighed. "That's because the picture is a profile shot. You're only seeing one side of his face." Shaking his head, he showed the picture to the second blonde for 5 seconds. "Officer, this is your suspect. How would you recognize him?" The second blonde giggled, flipped her hair, and said, "Oh, he'd be super easy to catch. He only has one ear." The officer clenched his jaw. "Seriously? It's a profile shot. Of course, you can only see one ear." Growing frustrated, he turned to the third blonde, took a deep breath, and in a firm voice said, "Look carefully. This is your suspect. How would you recognize him? And please think before you answer." The third blonde studied the picture intently. After a few seconds, she said, The suspect wears contact lenses." The officer blinked in surprise. He had no idea if that was true. "Wait here," he muttered and left the room. After checking the suspect's file, he returned, beaming. "Incredible! It's true. The suspect does wear contact lenses. How on earth did you figure that out?" The blonde grinned and said, "Easy. He can't wear regular glasses. He only has one eye and one ear." An arrogant professor boards a plane and takes a seat next to an elderly man. Mid-flight, the professor decides to play a game with the old man to prove his intellectual superiority. He turns to him and says, "Hey, would you like to play a little game with me?" The old man looks at him and asks, "What kind of game?" The professor grins and explains, "We take turns asking each other a question. If the other person knows the answer, the asker gives them $1. If they don't, the person who didn't know the answer gives the asker $1. Want to play?" The old man hesitates, then shakes his head. The professor, eager to prove himself, ups the stakes. "All right, if I lose, I'll give you $2 instead of 1. "No," the old man replies. $5. The professor insists. "No. $10. The old man remains firm. "I told you no." Desperate, the professor makes one final offer. "If I lose, I'll give you $100, and if you lose, you only give me $1. The old man thinks for a moment, then sighs. "Only if I get to start." The professor immediately agrees. "Go ahead," he says confidently, sure that he'll win. The old man asks, "What has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives inside a bucket?" The professor thinks hard, running through all the possibilities in his mind. After an hour of intense concentration, he gives up. Grumbling, he pulls out his wallet and hands the old man $100. Now the professor asks, "So, what has 5 heads, 40 feet, and lives inside a bucket?" The old man smiles, hands the professor $1, and says, "I have no idea. Here's your $1." Matt and his wife lived in the countryside. Matt was notoriously tight with money and hated spending it. One day, a fair came to the nearby town. "Let's go to the fair, Matt," his wife suggested. "We haven't been out in ages." Matt mulled it over. He knew he'd have to spend money at the fair. After a moment of thought, he finally agreed, "Fine, but I'm not spending much. We'll look around, but we won't buy anything." At the fair, they wandered around looking at all the things for sale. Matt's wife found many things she liked, but Matt wouldn't let her spend a dime. As they walked through the fairgrounds, they spotted an old, small airplane in a nearby field. A sign read, "Fun flight, $20 for 10 minutes. Matt had never been in an airplane, and he was intrigued, but he didn't want to pay for both of them. So he approached the pilot. "I've only got $20, Matt said. "Is there any chance my wife can come along for free?" The pilot, not selling many tickets, thought for a moment. "I'll make you a deal," he said. "If neither of you screams or shouts during the flight, your wife flies for free." Matt agreed, and he and his wife climbed aboard the small plane. The pilot took off, performing all kinds of stunts, loops, dives, sharp turns, and wild tricks, anything he could do to scare them. But Matt and his wife remained silent the whole time. Finally, the pilot landed and said, "Well, you both held your ground. Your wife's ride is free." Matt smiled and said, "Thanks. It wasn't easy, especially when she fell out." One lazy afternoon, a stoner was strolling along the beach, the sun warming his back and the waves whispering against the shore. As he shuffled through the sand, his foot struck something hard. Curious, he bent down and brushed away the grains to reveal an old, dusty lamp. With a grin, he picked it up and gave it a rub. In a flash of swirling smoke, a towering genie appeared, his deep voice booming. "Mortal, you have summoned me! You are granted 3 wishes. Choose wisely." The stoner, unfazed, scratched his head and grinned. "All right, for my first wish, let's smoke a joint together." The genie blinked, clearly not expecting that, but after a moment he shrugged. With a flick of his wrist, a perfectly rolled joint materialized. They lit up, passing it back and forth in comfortable silence, the salty breeze mixing with the fragrant smoke. After a while, the genie, looking more relaxed than usual, asked, "And your second wish?" The stoner exhaled slowly, his eyes half-lidded. "You know what? Let's smoke another one." The genie chuckled, snapped his fingers, and another joint appeared. They sparked it up, leaning back, watching the waves roll in. The silence stretched, content and easy. Eventually, the genie cleared his throat. "All right, what is your third wish?" The stoner pondered for a long moment, a slow smile creeping across his face. "Okay, for my third wish, let's smoke one more." The genie sighed but obliged, conjuring up another joint. They smoked in companionable silence until the last ember faded into the sand. With a final puff of smoke, the genie gave a small nod and vanished back into the lamp. The stoner stretched, staring out at the horizon, fully at peace. But just as he was about to head off, a swirl of smoke erupted from the lamp once more. The genie reappeared, this time holding a box of chicken nuggets. "All right," he said, popping one in his mouth. "So, what's your fourth wish?" Millions of years ago, 3 dinosaurs were lumbering through the jungle when they stumbled upon something unusual, a strange golden object half buried in the dirt. "What in the prehistoric world is this?" one of them asked, brushing off the dust. Curious, they gave it a rub and poof! A massive dino genie appeared, his smoky tail curling into the air. "You have awakened me!" the genie bellowed. "I shall grant each of you 1 wish!" The first dinosaur, licking his chops, didn't have to think long. "All right, I want a big, juicy piece of meat." With a snap of the genie's fingers, boom! A colossal, mouth-watering steak appeared in front of him, still sizzling. He let out a delighted roar and dug in. The second dinosaur, not wanting to be outdone, furrowed his brow. "I know! I want a whole shower of meat!" The genie nodded and snapped his fingers. Bam! Suddenly, gigantic slabs of meat began raining down from the sky, covering the ground in delicious carnivorous delight. The third dinosaur, determined to outshine the others, thought harder than both of them combined. He clenched his claws, squinted his eyes, and grinned. "I've got it!" he roared. "I want a meat-tire shower!"